Hey, what's up, college football fans? Here is another week of the Swampy Coliseum Podcast, and the regular season is over. We are 12 games in, looking toward the conference championships. As always, that is Nathaniel. I am Andrew, and man, we got some good games to talk about over this week. But of course, we'll always start off with our own teams facing rivalries this week. My team taking on, of course, the Florida State Seminoles. Nathaniel against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Coming on the losing end of it, Nathaniel, please, what were your thoughts on this game and really the USC season as a whole?
It's such a mixed bag of emotions because watching this team, watching knowing the standard of the Carroll years and seeing just the dumpster fire that was the Lane Kiffin years, Sarkisian, how that all went, and then Clay Helton. It's just this team is probably one of the best teams we've seen come out of USC. And I mean, great, really good defense. The offense has a spark and has playmakers everywhere. And it's just the entire year was just waiting for them to break out, break out, break out, and just never really happened. Ironically, probably the breakout moment was week one against LSU. And then it just that team, you could see it throughout the entire year, but it just felt like you were hitting a ceiling every single time. And I mean, that's what happened here, playing against Notre Dame, top five team in the nation. I think this was probably the only game realistically that I felt that the other team was better than us. And we still hung on. We were there the entire game. Um, we had a lot of missed opportunities on offense. Jaden Mayava had a really good game. I think he was like a top seven, top 10 PFF passer this game against the number two passing defense in the country. And I mean, he had 360 yards, three touchdowns. You could tell he's limited as a passer for sure. He just, by the middle of the game, he said, all this progression stuff, I'm not going to look at it. I'm going to see if we have a one-on-one opportunity. I don't care if it's one of our smaller receivers, Makai Lemon. I don't care who it is. I have playmakers. I'm just going to launch it. And I mean, he has a beautiful arm and it worked. We kept picking on this one cornerback. What's his name? This one cornerback pretty much the entire game.
Mm.
And let me pull up his name. Yeah, Christian Gray picked on him all game long, just constantly, constantly, constantly. Then as our defense made a couple stops after just getting bashed by the run game all game, made a couple stops, and we were at the like 15, 13-yard line, about to tie the game. And then Mayava just throws
Mm-hmm.
just not a great pass. Or I guess it was a 21, not the 13. My bad.
Yeah.
It was probably his worst pass of the game. And it was to Christian Gray, who got beat yet again to Kyron Hudson, who actually just entered the transfer portal a couple hours ago,
Mm.
but launched it up. He's been back shouldering it all game long. This was probably the only time he wanted to lead it. Hudson literally fell because he realized the ball was like 5 yards behind him. Gray
Mm.
picked it off. It went from a 35-28 game, 42-35 or 42-28.
Mm.
And then we march right back down the field. It's okay. We have the 2 minute timeout. We have all three timeouts. It's all good.
Not
We
over.
get to the 13, score touchdown, onside, or three timeouts, stop them, get the ball back, tie it up. And we get to 13-yard line, another pick six. And that was like, oh my gosh, are you serious?
Yeah.
And then of course, junk time, we hand the ball off to our freshman running back and he gets like 50 yards in four plays. Then we score a touchdown to kind of make it respectable. But it's one of those things. It's like we were right there, and it was just yet another fourth quarter meltdown with backbreaking interceptions. Pretty much
Yeah.
the story of this year. So defense, just I think we realized we need a lot of like meaty guys, like guys in that front seven to stop the run. We played really sound fundamental football, but when their offensive line is just kind of pushing you back, it's hard to, if you're in the right place, it doesn't matter if you get pushed 5 yards back. So I think that will be a big emphasis in the portal. Definitely was an emphasis on National Signing Day. We got Jakeem Stewart, Thanos, if you will, one of the top D linemen. I think that was one of the biggest surprise. It started steaming up right before, but yeah, sadly, our linebackers were a big bright spot this year, even with it being limited talent. And of course, Matt Entz, our linebackers coach, took a job at Fresno State right before signing day. Lost, I think, three of our commitments on the linebacking side. So I think National Signing Day, kind of moving on to that, was very up and down. I think we could have had a much better one, but when the day started with news that UCF was entertaining Lincoln Riley as their head coach, I don't know if you saw that, but that's what I woke up to. And I'm like, what
Wow.
on earth is this? And
Yeah.
then Matt Entz leaving, and then Madden Freymau, the linebacker from J. Sarah, went to Notre Dame, and it was just downhill from there. Then Jakeem Stewart signed, so that was fine. But yeah, I think looking at the bowl game, we 6-6. We get those bowl practices. I think Lincoln Riley is, really going to use this time to evaluate if Mayava is the way to go, or do we just get a placeholder QB for Hassan Longstreet, who we just signed as well. So we'll see. Probably like the LA Bowl hosted by Gronk, or the Holiday Bowl, or the Sun Bowl, or some who cares bowl just for all our freshmen to play. But
Yeah. Getting the experience out there is huge, especially for a young quarterback, for young guys who are trying to get more cohesion out there.
yeah,
I mean, it's a similar situation for us. We ended the year on a positive note, beating FSU 31-11, and this game was a lot closer than the score. It was disappointing in some sense because FSU was just awful all year. We said we weren't going to talk about them again until we finally played them, and yeah, Luke Kromenhoek doesn't look super special to me at all. FSU had 8 fumbles on the
it's
day.
insane.
I think we recovered 5 of them, if I'm not mistaken. But their offense just could not get anything going. They were able to get a touchdown at the end of the game, but our offense was also not playing stellar. We struggled on opening drives. It took a fumble recovery within the red zone that we got our first score, and of course we're able to control the game and win easily. But it's awesome to think that a 20-point win at the end of the year was disappointing in how we did it, because now we finished the year 7-5 and are looking towards a bowl game with a potential of having an 8-win season, which was unfathomable 10 weeks ago. So we're as Gator fans just super excited for what the future might be. And like you were mentioning, having the chance for some practices leading up to these bowl games and then getting into to spring ball, it's on the up and up right now. Ever since they announced that Napier was gonna stay, everything's flipped. The switch has gone. We've won 4 straight games. We're playing well on offense. Our defense has just been lights out, and it makes us think toward the future. And along with that, a recruiting class that a few weeks ago was in the 50s,
Yeah.
and it coincides also with that announcement that Napier was going to be staying. We started steadily flipping guys from different programs and ended up with what I've seen the 11th ranked class
Mm-hmm.
in this season.
Yeah.
Some have said 10, 11, but right around there. I mean, it's been a total overhaul. And I know there have been some really good signings, specifically even just in Jacksonville. We had a couple guys from Mandarin High School, quarterback Tramel Jones, and a safety Stubbs, both committed to the Gators. I thought we were going to get Jamie French, a 5-star wide receiver. He ended up signing with Texas. Then there was another, Solomon Thomas, was
Oh
an
yeah.
offensive lineman from Reigns who was committed to FSU, backed off, and was thinking Florida might be in there. He chose LSU at the end of the day. But along with some of those guys, some really key recruits um, that added to this great class. That if we can take what we have now, bring in some more young life that can replenish as the years go on, and then as always, he's got to hit a few guys in the portal. That just has to
Yeah.
happen every year. So with that being the case, our play in the trenches and in the trenches have been totally shocking. How our offensive and defensive lines have controlled the games for the last half of the season. But if we can keep building on what we have, which I mean, our guy Lagway is the Pied Piper. Everyone wants to come play with DJ Lagway. He draws people in, so it's exciting for sure. And I'm hoping, like, man, it's one thing to think about next year, but hopefully we can build this into a pipeline for the future, where
Yeah.
it takes one guy like this, one season, to start something that hopefully can gain traction. So certainly exciting for us. I know the Gator Bowl in Jacksonville really wants the Gators, but I've heard also maybe the Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa. It's probably going to be a Florida Bowl from what I'm seeing, but hopefully a good game to watch. And man, we got more fun football to look forward to for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So, yeah, National Signing Day yesterday was a lot of news back and forth, some flipping, some crazy results, but you know, we'll see.
Yeah.
You never know how good they actually are until they come play.
That's always the interesting thing, you know. I mean, obviously talent composite rankings and stuff like that. Like always you can kind of tell like the top teams normally have the best recruiting. But then you have teams like Texas A&M who was top whatever for every single year and just never really went anywhere. So it's about both the development and the recruiting and then also this transfer portal class like you're saying, like everything like you have to keep your players and you know it's tough to kind of wrap your mind around it nowadays but yeah it gets exciting especially because you have no idea where anyone's going until the pen
Right.
meets the paper.
Yeah, super exciting stuff. So cool news coming out of that. We'll see how it turns out over these next few years. And you know, a lot of guys are going to be coming in the spring, enrolling in classes and
Mm-hmm.
starting practices. So cool to see them getting in the fold. Let's talk about some other games from this past week because there were some upsets. There was some CFP shakeup that was going on. First one we got to mention Miami Syracuse. Miami started off the game up 21-0. 21-0 and lost the game 42-38. I mean, this was entertaining to watch. Again, we mentioned last week, Kyle McCord, the only quarterback who's passed for more yards in the season than Cam Ward, he outdueled him in this game, and they were able to come away with a victory, maybe ending Miami's playoff hopes. I mean, what were your thoughts from this game, Nathaniel?
it just it's one of those games where it's like Miami continues to play with fire over
Mm-hmm.
and over again. I think that strategy of they didn't really have a run game all year long. I think this is one of their better running performances. Damian Martinez finally got stuff going. Mark Fletcher had a pretty okay game, but it's whenever, you know, it comes to crunch time, it's whenever they need to put away a team, it's not, oh, let's run the ball, let's slow it down, let's keep pushing. It's that mentality of we want to score every single drive and not like we're not going to have methodical drives. We're going to try to launch it deep. We're going to try to get medium, intermediate routes. We're going to try to. Cam Ward had an amazing game. And like, but it's when you're putting your defense out to dry like that, Syracuse starts getting cooking because guess what? Now they have 3, 4 extra possessions and they start getting cooking and Miami starts to stall. And then, like you're saying, 21-0 out of the blue. Oh, it's 28-28.
Yeah,
Oh, you know, fumble return for a touchdown. We're making mistakes.
yeah,
Syracuse takes the lead. And I mean, that field goal at the end kind of felt, you know, obviously fourth and goal from like the 10 or something like that. But it kind of felt like that situation where you need a touchdown here. And then, I mean, you see what happens. Syracuse goes, runs out the clock, and game over.
Yeah, yeah, it was quite the scene to behold, and we'll talk about the playoff implications in a minute when we get there. But let's talk about some other games. The game, Michigan, Ohio State. Michigan's come in winning 3 years in a row. All the impetus is on Ohio State to win this game. They're the ones going to the playoffs, and they put up an absolute stinker, 13-10 loss to a 7-5 Michigan team. Oh my goodness! I've had some conversations previously in the year about these big team quarterbacks playing. This Will Howard guy, they wish they had Kyle McCord still. I mean, just the the game that they put on film there against Michigan, their biggest rival, with playoff aspirations, Big Ten title hopes on the line, they couldn't do anything. I mean, I was shocked.
Yeah, that was I just Ryan Day, you want to kind of what is happening with this guy? Like,
I don't know.
I think he's hearing all of the, oh, Michigan's just tougher than you guys. And finally, Ohio State gets a defense. And then what does Ryan Day decide to do against a really good Michigan defense, by the way? They just ran it. They're like, we'll just keep trying to run it right up the middle. We want to prove we're tougher. And they couldn't get anything going in the run game. I want to say they averaged, yeah, like three yards per carry. Will Howard, it kind of put Will Howard in a lot of hard spots, which I mean, he still had a horrendous game. He completed a little over 50%, had two interceptions. A couple, there was this span of like three drives where it was like pick, pick, pick. And I'm just sitting there like, what is happening? Like yeah, it was kind of funny. I was kind of watching it on the side because the SC game was going too. But every time we got like an update, it'd be like, oh, Michigan threw another pick. Oh, Ohio State threw a pick. Oh, three and out, three and out. And I think Ohio State went away from kind of what made them better than Michigan. And I mean, it's not like Michigan really did anything. They scored 13 points. I think they had like 200 yards of offense. So it was a tough one to kind of watch the highlights of because it was like 2 minutes worth of highlights.
Yeah, it was brutal. And with that, now we've talked about the Florida game. We've talked about Ohio State, Michigan. We've got to bring up this whole idea of flag planting because it was all over the country this week. All the outrage, the fights that went on. What are your thoughts on the whole flag planting situation?
um, it's fun, honestly. I mean, USC planted the flag at the Rose Bowl last week. It's stuff like this where it just makes college football better, in my opinion, than the NFL. It's just more passionate of a game, more intimate of a game, and just brawls after brawls or one hilarious. Sometimes they go way too far, like the Ohio State police, they've, pepper spraying the Michigan
Yeah.
guys. Uncalled for. Are you serious? Like, obviously, there's, Ohio hatred from those Ohio State guys, but I mean, I think it's all good fun. I love, tearing down the goalposts, like all that stuff. Like, it's what makes college football. And I think it's kind of that tradition and that passion that we're kind of holding on to that, with, all the money coming in and all the corporateness college football's kind of turning to. It's stuff like this where it's like, okay, you have to focus on the great things while we feel like a lot of things are getting picked up and thrown out for, for money and stuff.
Yeah, it is. The everything is changing in college football, and my initial take on it is just like how gross the pride is, and like, oh, it's just team, take your win, go shake hands, go move on. But I understand the passion of what's going on in these games, and the they've just been fighting for 3.5 hours tooth and nail to win this huge game, and it's hard to just turn that off when the
Yeah.
game ends. So tensions are raised, and people are angry, they're frustrated. So it brings a lot of emotion to the table. But I don't. Yeah, when it gets to the point of pepper spraying athletes because of the craziness that's going on, that's pretty wild. But too much going on there. Well, we got a couple more games. The South Carolina matchup, South Carolina against Clemson. We knew this was going to be a great game. 17-14 win for South Carolina, inching their way up towards the playoff. Not quite there as of right
Yeah.
now, but Clemson seemingly losing their way out of the ACC championship, but still gets in because Miami lost later in the day. So this one, I mean, it's crazy that Clemson still has a chance to make it into the playoff, but they do.
Yeah. I mean, what Clemson's 1-2 against non-conference. They've lost. Have they won against a ranked team? I have to go through their schedule, but this game was so dumb. Like, I remember last week I was saying all Clemson needs to do is just don't get into one of their lulls, just keep the gas on the whole game. And they're up 14-7 in the fourth. I mean, in the third quarter. I guess in the fourth quarter, yeah, they started the fourth quarter up 14-7. And then the game gets to 14-10. And what do? Punt. Then they go down 17-14, pick, game over. So I mean, South Carolina, Lenore Sellers looked great. He had some of those plays where you're like, who is this guy? Like, he is just a
Yeah.
insane freak of nature, a freshman too, which is crazy.
That
I think
20-yard touchdown run to win the game, nasty.
insane,
Oh,
insane,
so good.
insane. Like you just him just running around, and then you're like, no one's
Oh,
gonna take him down, and then oh, he's free. See ya.
yeah, that was beautiful to watch. That's college football right there. So
Exactly.
again, with the implications of that game, and maybe the craziest game of the week was back on Friday night. That was Georgia taking on Georgia Tech in 8 overtimes it took to win this game. This was a wild one. I was up with my family watching it the whole time, begging for Georgia Tech to win the game. They end up losing. Georgia makes their way into the SEC championship game, but which they were already going to be there, but it just makes it almost sure they're going to make it into the playoffs. So frustrating to see, but that was a wild one.
Yeah, no, that one was insane. I think it was just a joy to watch. Is I just don't know with this new overtime format. Like obviously you don't want the 74-72 Texas A&M LSU game where you have pretty much another game added on to already a game. But then it's like once it got into the 2 point shootout, it was kind of like obviously it was still a lot of fun to watch, but then it's like okay, it's a one shot type thing. Like who knows? And with that, I don't know your thoughts about coaching in this new landscape, but do you go in that first overtime? You score a touchdown. Do you go for two to just win the game? Because it was at Georgia, correct? At Georgia,
Yeah.
win the game. You're a 20-point underdog. Do you go for two? Or do you say, hey, we're going to try to extend it to another overtime?
Yeah, I was calling for him to go for it, to send it right there because you're on the road, you're playing a better team. You are the severe underdog. You got to take your chance when you have it and just give Haynes King an opportunity to make a play, let him move around. But they, I like the idea to go for it in that moment. But man, then it was watching all these 2 point conversions, and I'm like, I turned to my dad. I turned to my dad, and I said, "They're trying their best 2 point plays, right? Like this,
Yeah, like
this is the best that they have to offer." When was it Georgia Tech who motioned their whole offensive line out to the side at one point. I was like, this is what we're doing right now? Are you kidding me? So, oh my goodness. I was just like, it was just crazy watching it back and forth. And we put something else on one TV and just had it on the side. And I'm just looking over every 20 seconds. Oh my gosh.
Nope.
Oh my gosh. Crazy. But I mean, what a result. Fun game to watch. I selfishly wanted it to go the other way, but
Me too.
still very exciting. But with that, let's talk about our new CFP poll because there's plenty to talk about there. And one, the poll itself, but also the bracket as we see it currently. So, Nathaniel, would you give us our what the bracket looks like right now? So starting with our top four projected conference winners will be 1 through 4, and then the next 7 will be everyone else filtering in, along with the 5th highest ranked conference winner. So
Yeah.
with that, it's really interesting, and we'll see how the poll relates to it as well. So what do we got, Nathaniel?
Yeah, sorry. My computer's froze. All right. So we have funny enough, we have still Boise State has that 4 spot, but so we have in the 1 spot Oregon, projected winner of the Big Ten. Then we have 2 Texas, 3 SMU, which I think they're 8 in the new ranking, and then 4 Boise State. All of them have buys. Then we have 8 Ohio State against 9 Tennessee. We have 5 Penn State against 12 Arizona State. We have 7 Georgia versus 10 Indiana. And we have 6 Notre Dame against 11 Alabama, who sneaks in with 3 losses.
Sneaks in with 3 losses, and that's the whole debate of the week, right? They put Alabama there in the 11 slot with Miami right behind them in the rankings, and you got to make a decision. Who do you put in that spot, Alabama or Miami? What are your thoughts?
It's just that whole 11 to 14 was a toss up. You have Alabama 9-3, then you have Miami right after them at 10-2, Ole Miss 9-3, South Carolina 9-3.
Yep.
And it's really what do you like? What do you value? Do you value bigger wins or do you value less worse losses?
Yep.
Obviously, Alabama out of all 4 teams had the worst losses out of all of them, but arguably they had the best wins. Except then Ole Miss had the same win against Georgia, so it's really like But Alabama lost to Tennessee, lost to Vandy, lost to Oklahoma. Ole Miss obviously lost to Kentucky, Florida, and then LSU.
Yep.
So it's really weird. I mean, obviously, it's tough to figure out where those 4 teams go. South Carolina, which we both agree is probably one of the hottest teams out right now. You can't jump Ole Miss and Alabama when both those teams beat you in the head-to-head. So it's tough. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. Probably would have been easier to put Miami at 11 just because of the win-losses. But, I mean, would I argue Ole Miss over Alabama? Probably. That's where I would probably have it 11 Ole Miss, 12 Miami or Alabama, then South Carolina behind just because of head-to-head. But it's what the decision they made, and it kind of looks like if Boise State loses, they're out completely. They won't, they'll get jumped. So maybe Miami gets in. Oh wait, no, they can't because UNLV jumps up. So yeah. So I think the only way Alabama doesn't get in is if Clemson beats SMU. And then at that point, is it Clemson or SMU, are they getting kicked out? We'll have to see.
Oh, so many questions that make it so interesting to talk about. And I noticed that for you, you weren't even talking about Alabama versus Miami. You were talking Alabama, Ole Miss. So you don't even have Miami in that next slot.
It's hard because Miami has played no one.
Yeah.
Like they have played, I think their best win was Duke. Duke is a good team. I think they're 9-3. Honestly, I think it's so stupid at the bottom. Missouri is ranked, but then someone like Duke isn't. It's we have a bunch of ACC teams. I think there's another ACC team that Miami beat that's just right on the outskirts. But you put those two teams there, but then you put Missouri at 19. And is it because it's a little biased? Maybe you help boost some resumes when Missouri has, I think, all three losses were pretty much blowout losses to
Mm.
the only good teams they played. I think they had one of the easiest SEC schedules besides Texas, and they just fumbled that completely. So it's tough. I mean, there's obviously a lot of politics at play that we're not privy to. Who knows what happens? No one else is in the room where it happens. But yeah,
You're right about that. So interesting. And this is why the SEC will and Greg Sankey will be continuing to clamor for the 16 team playoff. Right.
it's too
Imagine
much.
it. Oh, I agree. I mean, it would be interesting, but I agree. But imagine if Alabama, South Carolina, and Ole Miss are all in there. I mean,
Yeah.
who knows then at that point? But no, we're at some point we have to stop with the playoff. But
Yeah.
we're past the point of arguing about FSU or Alabama making it into the playoff last year as the 4 seed. At this point, if you've lost 2 or 3 games, that's on you
Yeah,
to miss your
exactly.
spot in the playoff. I mean, we have a top 12 seeds. You're not one of the big favorites to win anymore. So, it hopefully it's tamped down a bit to say, hey, you're not probably having a good chance anyway. So let's move forward. But
Yeah. I would argue instead of increasing it, I think we should decrease it. I
ooh,
12, I probably like maybe a 10 or an 8.
mm,
I It's hard to think like especially just looking at this year like oh yeah, we have a ton of teams kind of right there. But should any of them really be right there? Like
mm,
maybe you can argue a South Carolina, but they did lose 3 games out there. I just feel like there shouldn't be a world where a 3 loss team should be able to, kind of make their way and have a shot. But then again, with these new super conferences, you're playing a lot harder competition on a consistent basis. But the SEC has 8 conference games. So I don't know. I think that's definitely a discussion. At least we don't have Rob Manfred leading it with the golden at bats rule.
uh,
Who knows?
yeah, we don't need to go there. That is just ridiculous. Otani flies out to right. Next up to bat, Otani.
Otani.
Oh goodness. Well, hey, I mean, and looking at these teams for me, to your point, a lot of them have flaws that I
So
just don't
many.
trust in them. I mean,
Yeah.
Oregon is undefeated, and as I've mentioned previously, I haven't watched a ton of them, but they look like maybe the most complete team right now. Texas has been really shaky at the quarterback position. SMU hasn't played much of anyone this year. Boise State, same way. Penn State, I don't trust the quarterback play.
Nope.
Notre Dame had a terrible loss against Northern Illinois. Other than that, they've actually looked really good. Georgia, can't trust the quarterback play. Ohio State, can't trust the quarterback play. Tennessee, same story. Young guy Lava has been up and down so far this year. Indiana, when they finally played a good team, got killed. Alabama has had some terrible losses. Arizona State doesn't play great teams. I mean, from what I looked at right there, Oregon and Notre Dame were my two that stood out the most as who I would have confidence in, I guess. And even with that, that's shaky as it is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
man, I'm. You were saying 12 is too much. I just want to see what it looks like. I want to
Yeah,
see.
obviously, yeah.
I want to see an 11 play a 6. I want to see what happens when we have this 8-9 matchup that's going to be so entertaining, as I know you do too. So, yeah, it's a whole new realm, and I'm definitely excited for it and for the home games in that first round. It's going
Oh,
to be
that's gonna be insane. That's why I kind of wanted Boise State not to get a seed just because I wanted to see them have a home game. I think that'd be great. But obviously, even if they didn't get that auto bid, they wouldn't get a home game. But that blue field, that would have been beautiful. But then we're gonna have, I guess, yeah, Notre Dame's gonna have a home game. It's gonna be cold. It's gonna be snowing, and we're gonna get a team like I don't know what who do we say Notre going to Notre Dame? Alabama
Alabama.
boys from the South that doesn't don't travel up. That's what they say. They don't travel to the north, and they're gonna have to play in the snow. So I think that's gonna be a really fun game.
Definitely. And my last little comment on how they did the rankings, I'm upset that they have Ohio State ahead of Tennessee. Right there, because Tennessee has ended the season stronger. Ohio State just came off that bad loss to
Mm-hmm.
Michigan, and they get penalized by dropping to 8. But I think they should have dropped to 9, and that only matters because Tennessee would then be hosting the playoff game
Exactly.
if it stays as it is. So that I wish they would have put Tennessee ahead. I just think they've played overall a better schedule and have ended up with the same record and have been playing better as of late. So that was my one, frustration right there. But we'll see if it stays that way after this
Yeah.
week.
I mean, if you look at the top five, two of those teams will have a loss, another loss that will move them down.
Yeah.
But it's hard to it'll be interesting to see if a loss in the conference championship, how much that'll be worth. Like SMU, does that kick them out of the playoffs if they
Right.
lose? Penn State, if they lose, or Georgia, or maybe even Texas, Oregon, how far do they drop? Because if we want to look at precedents, which obviously there is none, but in the 4 game, I mean, TCU lost their Big 12 championship
Yeah.
and they still were a top 4 team. So they definitely felt that, TCU didn't do anything to lose that spot, which I feel like maybe we'll see. I don't know. I don't know if SMU loses. I think, especially by 2 or more scores, I think there may be a lot of movement where they can get Miami or Ole Miss or someone in.
Yeah. And along with that, TCU was undefeated going into the game and played a great game to, barely lose there to Kansas State. So, definitely different than maybe an 11-1 SMU team. So plenty to think about. But yeah, to consider. We said SMU is 8 right now.
Yep.
So could they drop?
More than 3 spots. I mean, so if
3
they
or
don't
spots.
drop, Alabama doesn't get in.
Exactly. So then you have to go to the debate of SMU or Alabama.
And then should they just opt out of the conference championship because they're at 8 right now?
Ooh, man, how do you penalize someone for earning the right to win the conference championship and
Yeah.
then penalize them for losing when
Yeah,
you're adding in a team who didn't make it to their conference championship?
exactly.
It goes back to the whole question with FSU last year. Is it the 12 most deserving teams
Yeah.
or is it the 12 best team? And wow, okay, we're spending a lot of time on this, but it's important
Yeah.
because even they've given these 5 qualifiers, right? Like the top 5 ranked conference champions will go into the playoff. But at the same time, they've always said about the playoff, it's the 12 best teams. Best teams. That's what we're doing. But they have a situation where you're earning your way, not by necessarily being the best, but by earning it. So it's just like it's a little bit out of both sides of our mouth because do they really, if Arizona State wins the conference championship, do they really believe Arizona State's one of the 12 best? No, but they're putting them there because of the rule they created. So it's a little bit out of both sides of the mouth for the committee, but it's good football, and that's all we care
Yeah.
about right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's move forward. We had a great conversation there. I've got a trivia question that is hot and spicy and ready for Nathaniel right now. And man, I hope you're ready for it because
Oh, I don't know if I am.
I certainly am. Boy, I hope I am. Well, okay, here we go. So we're heading into the playoffs coming up after this week. We'll have conference championships and then playoffs, which leads, of course, always to a national champion. And looking back over history, there have been numerous national champions, great teams. As I look at the list right in front of me, and all those teams, of course, were led by really good quarterbacks.
Oh gosh.
So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go one by one down the line. I'm gonna give you the team. You need to tell me the starting quarterback for that national championship team.
Oh, how
Okay?
how deep are we pulling?
I mean, I'm just starting from last year. So
Okay.
we're just gonna go back in time until you miss one. All right. That'll
Oh
be our plan.
gosh. All right.
And then we'll see, maybe you can miss one and we'll see about a few more, but I can tell you where it gets a little hairy at some point, but we'll see how you do. Okay.
Yeah, we'll see.
Let's start us off the top. 2023 Michigan.
JJ McCarthy.
That is correct. The year before, we had 2022 Georgia.
Stetson Bennett.
Stetson Bennett
Almost pulled the Carson Beck like off rip. I'm like, no, that he hasn't had one.
has not had one, but that leads us back to 2021. Georgia won it for the first time.
Stetson yet again. One of the greatest quarterbacks of our generation.
Has to be. Has to be for sure. 2020, we had the Alabama Crimson Tide winning.
And that was Mac Jones. Can't believe Bryce Young never won one. I was trying to like immediately. I'm like, oh man, that Alabama, just all those quarterbacks that might mess me up. And then yeah, Bryce Young didn't even win any. So
yeah, well, we're not done with Alabama yet. So
there's a Tua somewhere in there.
2019 LSU.
Joe Burrow.
Joe Shiesty, that's an easy one.
Shiesty. Joe.
2018 Clemson.
That was Trevor. Was that Trevor? That was Trevor Lawrence, right?
Trevor Lawrence.
No. It was Deshaun.
No, I said yes.
Okay. Your voice dropped, and I was like, oh no.
No. Trevor Lawrence, yes, 2018 national championship as a freshman coming in there.
Yeah.
The year before, 2017, Alabama once again.
That would be Tua Tagovailoa.
Tua, great pull. That's good there. The year 2016, Clemson.
Now we got Deshaun Watson.
That is Deshaun Watson, yes. 2015, once again, Alabama.
Jalen Hurts freshman year, right?
It is not Jalen Hurts.
No shot. Oh, his freshman year, they lost to Clemson. So that, dude, I don't even know quarterback. Was like AJ McCarron? No, that was like 2012. Alabama in 2015.
This has to be the toughest one on the list.
It's not Blake Sims. He never won one.
No.
It's not McElroy. That was like early. No. Coker, is that a guy?
Yes!
Jake Coker?
Yes. Jacob Coker winning the championship for Alabama. That's a good pull right there. That was nice.
Those Alabama quarterbacks, I don't know what
Uh,
order. I know Coker, that just felt like a name, and I just went.
yeah. Well, we'll go a few more. I know you missed that one. That was kind of end of the game, but great pull. Let's just see about a few more. 2014 Ohio State.
Cardell Jones.
Third stringer Cardell Jones coming in there. 2013 Florida State.
Big Jameis Winston. What a guy.
What a guy. What a, your boy Mayava was doing his best Jameis Winston impersonation last week. Those back to back pick sixes.
Okay, funny story. It'll go off track a little, but fantasy league for my work league, I had Denver. I had Denver defense. Other guy had he I don't think he had Jameis. I forgot who he had, but he took the lead and Denver defense, those two pick sixes at the end.
Oh my goodness.
Literally, I was down out of the playoffs, down by 7, and then it just went doot, doot, and I'm like, that was
Wow.
beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. Pulled it off last second. I texted him. I'm like, I don't know if you're watching this, but this is the most. Oh, he had Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton. That's who it was.
Wow.
But it was the most roller coaster, like 10 minutes.
Dang. Yeah, that's crazy. Those fantasy things at the end. Jameis is wild. Absolutely. Well, then, right before that, we had two back-to-back Alabama championships in 11 and 12.
Is it McCarron? Are they
It
both
is.
McCarron?
It is AJ McCarron, both of them. Then we'll just do a couple more. 2010 Auburn.
Mr. Cam Newton.
Cameron Newton. 09 Alabama.
Is that McElroy?
That is Greg McElroy. And let's finish it off with
McElroy.
2008 Florida.
Was that Chris Leaf?
Stop it. I believe it was Christian Leaf.
No, we got Timothy. What's his middle name? Barron. I don't know what his middle name is. Timothy Tebow. Timothy Jeffrey. I
Timothy,
feel like.
the man Tebow. Yes. To end there. Hey, good job. Jacob Coker. Very good pull there with the 2015 national championship. Pretty
Yeah,
good on that list. And man,
I
it's
feel like going past that Alabama kind of clump, it honestly feels like it was easier after. Like I feel pretty confident that I could get all the way down to like 2003, but
yeah. You got
we don't have to, but yeah.
well with that, you have the '07 LSU quarterback,
Was it the Jefferson guy?
Jordan Jefferson.
Yeah.
I actually was looking to get there on my list, and you can look it up for me. Um, I just made it to Tebow because I didn't have confidence you would make it past that.
Oh wow. I probably I get yeah 2000. I guess I didn't even think of 2007.
Yeah,
Let me
yeah.
see.
From there, I mean, I'm thinking my mind back to like Matt Flynn and those guys, but I can't remember who won it exactly in '07. But man, that's our trivia. Good job. You'll have another one for us next week, and we'll let you guys know about our schedule for upcoming episodes as well, with everything happening with the bowl games and everything. But it'll be exciting for sure. We'll see if you get that answer for us. But we're also going to be
It
moving
was
on.
Matt Flynn.
Let's go. Okay.
Packers legend, Matt Flynn.
Oh man, they gave him a contract for nothing. But hey, let's move on to our risers and fallers for this week. So we've already talked about some of the big games that happened. Who do we see as our biggest risers and fallers for the polls from this week? And for me, I'll start it off. My biggest riser, I'm actually going to go outside of the playoff realm. And I'm going to go to our team that beat a playoff contender. I'm going Syracuse. They really have been, I'd say, looked down on over this whole year and how they played. And I looked at some statistics to find, what kind of stood out from these different teams. And like we said about Kyle McCord, he's been playing great over this year, leading the nation in he's been leading the nation in passing yards. He's been just playing great. And I saw that looking at the top about 17, 18 teams in college football, um, and throwing Syracuse in there, looking at the combined records of the teams they beat. So basically, your strength of victories. And Syracuse had the second highest strength of victory out of everyone.
That's
By
insane.
looking at it, by in terms of winning percentage, their opponents had won, I believe, over 65% of their games. And I believe only right above them was Alabama, whose opponents had won 70% of their games. So really interesting. They fought through, of course, not always the best teams. Some of those are some lower level opponents who just had really good years. But Syracuse played really great to finish with a 9-3 record on the year, made their way up into the top 20 to finish off the season. So I was really impressed by them and how they got a huge win last week.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle McCord, maybe he should have stayed at Ohio State.
Maybe they
But
shouldn't have kicked them out.
yeah, no, exactly, exactly. I mean that bowl game, what he got? Oh, he didn't even play that bowl game, but it was an okay season. Um, yeah, for me, I think this is tough, especially when you're looking at the playoff field because everyone did what they had to, except for obviously some teams we'll be mentioning later. Um, but you could go Notre Dame. I'm not going to. That's disgusting. I can't do it. I think one fun one we could be Oregon, but they haven't moved from one for a while. So you know what? We'll just go Oregon. I don't think we've done Oregon all year long.
Probably not. They just
I
dipped
know
in.
I haven't. I
Oh,
haven't. I think just undefeated, easy pick. But I mean, they did exactly what they needed to do all year. They had a game against Washington where rivalry, tensions high. They are looking at Washington as a team that single handedly kept them out of the playoffs last year. And they dominated. Obviously, not the same Washington team, but Dan Lanning is creating something special. As I hate to admit it, I don't want to see Oregon win or do anything great, but that's watching him build that program. You kind of sit there, wishing that that was your program, that he just kind of pulled from not nothingness, but they were mediocre for a while under like Helfrich and Willie Taggart. And just out of nowhere, he said, we're going to build this team up, and they're number one with all the momentum. They're playing a Penn State team, which should they be three? Who knows? We'll see. We'll get into that in the pick'ems later. But yeah, I mean, Oregon did what they needed to do. I think being undefeated in this landscape where you see a lot of teams falter,
mm-hmm.
seeing teams like Georgia lose and play close to like Georgia Tech. You see Alabama, these powerhouses lose to teams that shouldn't be in the same conversation as them. So it's impressive that, Oregon ended up going undefeated in the regular season. And onto that, um, I will go with my biggest faller, a team that I have continually hated on ish throughout the year, kind of thinking they would fall, never really did until the last 2 out of 3 games. And now I kind of feel bad for them. But
Mm,
Miami,
yeah.
Cam Ward, I think weirdly has been one of the least talked about. Like he's not super high up there in Heisman conversations, even though he's probably been, I mean, he's been the best quarterback um, all year long. And I mean, they pretty much punted themselves out of the playoffs, losing to, like you said, a pretty good Syracuse team. Um, so it's tough to see that. I think it's also funny as a certified Mario Cristobal hater. I think that was hilarious, but also you start to feel bad. But yeah, they'll have to reboot it up next year with Cam Ward leaving. I think that was probably one of the best transfer portal quarterbacks after Caleb Williams.
Sure, sure. I had no faith in him coming off of his history at Washington State, but man, he proved me wrong and had a great season. Even if they missed
Mm-hmm.
the playoffs, he really had a great season.
Yeah.
For me, we we've mentioned some other teams, Ohio State. They just didn't fall enough to really say they could be the biggest faller. Clemson, even though they lost, still has a chance to make it in, so I can't say them either. Mine's got to be Texas A&M. They had a rivalry game against Texas to make it to the SEC championship game, to fight for a chance. It was win and in for the SEC championship, and they completely laid an egg. Couldn't get anything going on offense. They didn't score any points on offense. Their only points were a pick six. They got down to the 1 yard line, ended up turning the ball over on downs. And that's coaching right there. They were at the 1 yard line in the fourth quarter, down 10. You've got to get points. Make it a one possession game. Give yourself a chance. No, they go for it. They don't get it. Pretty much ending the game at that point. Texas A&M goes from having a chance to make it to the SEC championship to dropping all the way out of the top 25 in the rankings. So terrible loss for them. Just in heartbreaking to finish the year where they were hoping for a chance to sneak into the playoffs and weren't able to. So Texas A&M, my biggest faller, and that brings us to our picks for the week. We've got 5 great matchups for you that we're going to be covering. Conference championships that have a huge impact on what the playoff is going to look like. So we'll start from the top, make our way all the way through, and decide who we think is going to make it into the playoff. In our first game, we have Boise State. Oh, the Heisman Trophy winner? Oh, I don't know. Boise State against UNLV. Hey, let's not sleep on UNLV here. They are a really good team that has been
Mm-hmm.
playing great since Haj Malik took over as quarterback. And man, I would really watch out for them if I'm Boise State. But with that being said, I just got to keep riding the Bronco. Ashton Genty has been dominant this year. They just have to rely on him in the ground game. But what it's really going to come down to is Maddox Madsen controlling the ball and not making any big mistakes. If they can keep the tempo how they want it, if they can control the game, I think they'll have a good chance to win it.
Yeah, I think UNLV, great team. I mean, they've had a great season, and I mean, it's easy to look at the last time they played where Boise State really not dominated them, but really did what they wanted to. They really kept UNLV's just firepower offense just limited them a lot, just with a lot of different things they were doing, and it's it feels like a trap to go UNLV just because Boise State faded kind of at the end. They didn't lose, but it was a lot closer games. They had that one score win over Wyoming where they just leaned
Mm.
on Ashton Genty. But, I believe in this Boise State team. I think Genty they rested him the second half of their last game, which talking about Heisman, Travis Hunter was getting bombs thrown at him up 42-0.
Yeah,
Ashton Genty, they said second half, we don't need it.
yeah,
So they rested him up because they actually are playing for something later on. So I believe they'll ride him, and I think there's going to be a great performance. Obviously, Madsen he has to throw well. He has to be able to make his completions so they don't completely stack the box. And I think that's going to be the big thing for this game. But I'm going Boise State.
yeah. Good one there. Well, we're heading over to the Big 12 for our next matchup. Iowa State is playing against Arizona State. Arizona State been favored in this game in terms of they're projected to be the number 12 seed in the playoff. This is such an interesting one. And I'm interested to see where you're going to go because we didn't know who was going to play in this game for a long time. And finally it's set up. So who do you think is going to win the Big 12?
Oh, gotta go. Former Pac-12 member, Arizona State, former Sacramento State running back, Cam Scattaboo, Stingers up. Arizona State's gonna win this game. Iowa State has folded in almost every big game they've played. Arizona State is on fire. Levitt, their quarterback, he just plays good football. I think he might be a freshman, if I'm not mistaken. I found that out playing college football 25 when I was looking to transfer somewhere, and I think it said he was a freshman. I could be completely wrong. But that Arizona State, they got hot at the right time. Kenny Dillingham has this team rolling, and I think it's going to be too much for Iowa State.
Yeah, it really, really changes things if Iowa State ends up winning this game. They've got maturity on their side. Rocco Becht has been there for a while. Matt Campbell leading that team. They have just faltered in some ways at the end of the season. But man, I'm going to lean with their experience. I'm going to say Iowa State wins this game and shakes things up, makes it into that 12 seed. I would guess then loses to the 5 seed right after that. But I'm going to pick Iowa State and trust in their ability to come and win this game. With that, we're going over to the ACC with only one team from the Atlantic Coast in this game, but Clemson playing SMU. We've talked a lot about this Clemson team over the year where we're, I don't know, almost just waiting for them to realize their potential. And for the most part, it hasn't happened. I'm picking SMU to come in and win this game the way they should. SMU deserves the spot in the playoffs. I think they've played the best of any ACC team over this year, and I want that to be what happens. Also, a first year in the ACC, they're coming in and already maybe winning it. It's pretty impressive. So I'm going with the Mustangs.
Yeah, this one's a interesting one to pick. I feel like SMU is just stronger. I think they're a more complete team. I don't know if they have more talent, but they're playing up to their potential. And that's where Clemson's been faltering all year long. They just have spurts of playing really good football and then spurts of they're okay. Um, this one, I think all week I was leaning SMU, and then Dabo Sweeney dropped one of the hardest, not hardest quotes, but he said, "We were the first 15-0 champions. Maybe we'll be the first 3-loss champion or whatever it was." And I sat there, I'm like, "Ooh, it's Dabo Sweeney. It's Dabo Sweeney, right?" But I'm going, ooh, I was gonna go SMU. I'll go Clemson here.
Oh man.
Just I think SMU's gonna win, but I was about to say SMU. Then I looked at the records for this year, and you're up by 4. So I'm gonna need some craziness to happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. We should review that. What were our results from last week?
Yeah, so I went 1-4,
Ah,
and you went 4-1.
yep.
You went, I mean, obviously the 3 that we separated were you picked South Carolina, I went Clemson. I don't know if I should go with them again. I feel like every time I pick Clemson, they lose. I'm pretty sure I picked Clemson over Georgia. Never mind.
Oh,
I scrolled up, I picked Georgia.
okay,
Um,
good.
good thing. You went Texas. I thought SEC craziness would continue to happen, and I went Texas A&M. And then you went Notre Dame. I went USC. But
Oh yeah,
we
of
both
course.
went Alabama and Kansas State. So you're up 43-28 to 39-32.
Okay.
So I'm gonna need to make up some distance. This is a close game. I think I can sacrifice. We're obviously gonna do the playoff games and stuff
Yeah,
like that, so it's not like it's over, but it feels
not
like this
over,
is a deciding moment in time.
not over yet, but it's getting close. So that's a good thought. Well, two games to go for this week. We've got the SEC, Georgia, Texas. Huge matchup, a rematch from earlier in the year where Georgia beat Texas 30-15 and really controlled the game the whole way. Who are you picking this time?
This one's tough. Texas, I don't know if you saw, but they are, they're projected to win. They're favorited. That's what I was looking for. They have a 2.5 point, favorite, which is weird because, like you said, it's not like Texas went to Georgia and got spanked. They were
Yeah,
at home. Now it's a neutral field. It's in Georgia, right? It's
yeah,
Mercedes
Atlanta.
Benz.
Yeah,
So it's pretty much a Georgia home game ish, as close as a home game as you can get in a neutral site with a team that has played SEC championships for however many years against a first timer. And Texas, they've won one Big 12 championship in how many years?
yeah,
Um, it's hard to beat a team twice, especially with Georgia fading a little bit in that Georgia Tech game. But I'm confident Georgia is going to win this game. I think they're just played better football this year, and Texas has stumbled once in a year where they haven't really had any competition.
yeah, yeah. That conversation of Texas's schedule is really interesting because even being in the SEC, they have played a cakewalk schedule compared to other teams like Georgia, who's been tested over and over and over again. So you can say part of the reason they have two losses is because of the competition they've been facing. With that being said, we've talked about not really being able to trust either quarterback at different times, especially Carson Beck, who has had some interception troubles. Another big problem with them has been their running game. Georgia has not been able to get anything going running the ball, especially since Trevor Etienne has been out for the last few weeks. On the flip side of things, Texas has been running all over people. Wisner, they've been feeding him the ball. He's gone for, I think, maybe over 350 in their last two games combined. Really getting that ground game going, which they need to support Quinn Ewers. And with that, I'm going to say Texas is going to win because they have those things that I think you really need in a game like this where Georgia has not been doing the same after almost losing to Georgia Tech. And I think the two teams are just kind of going in different directions at this point, which leads us to our final game of the week. The highest ranked, of course, we have Oregon. Oregon, who's playing against Penn State in this Big Ten championship game after Ohio State lost their way out of a chance with a rematch with Oregon. This is fairly easy for me. I still really doubt Drew Aller and his chances of beating a good Oregon team. I've got so much more confidence in Dylan Gabriel and the Ducks. So I'm picking Oregon to win, going into the playoffs as the number one seed, undefeated, and maybe having a good chance there as well.
Yeah. I mean, James Franklin, great, good, good coach. I don't know if you can put him, maybe he's a great coach, just not an elite coach. He loses almost every single big time game he's in. Um, so that alone makes it easy for me to pick Oregon. I mean, Oregon beat Ohio State this year. They've done great things. I mean, that Ohio State game, if Will Howard was a little smarter, maybe it would have ended a little differently. But I mean, like I was saying earlier, Dan Lanning's got this team going. They've only had really one hiccup ish. I guess, yeah, one against Wisconsin. But I mean, they just play complementary football. I mean, their defense is just, they're legit. Their defense is legit. Their offense just, when they're on, they're on. So we'll
Yep.
see. I think Oregon takes this one easily.
I agree. I agree. And that does it for us for another week of the Swampy Coliseum podcast. You can follow along, see how we do on our picks this week. Hey, we only have a few more weeks left of the college football season, which is sad to say, but really fun playoffs that we're looking forward to. So we'll be back with you next week to follow up on all the conference championships that happened. We're so glad you listen along with us. Again, subscribe, follow us on YouTube. You can follow us on Spotify, on Instagram to see what's going on throughout the week. We're so glad to talk football with you. For Nathaniel Gilmore, I'm Andrew Hudson. We're out. We'll talk to you next week.